Hi, everyone. Let's get started with scaling inclusive wheelchair innovations. Okay. Maria Chiara, are my slides here? Okay. So, I'm Leslie Davis, and I am a white woman of hopefully indeterminate age, somewhere in the 50s range. I'm wearing a black and white pinstripe suit and a green turtleneck sweater, and my hair is sort of brown and white. So I've been a wheelchair user and disabled walker for nearly 20 years. And when I became disabled, I had a job that required traveling around the world. And I wanted to keep my job, so I had to figure out how to travel as a person with a mobility disability. So this made me keenly interested in the design of portable yet robust wheelchairs and rollators, and also in the differences in the accessibility of the built environment between countries. And I found myself consulting on a few different wheelchairs, including one that I love. It's called the Track Master, and it's one of those wheelchairs that has the tank treads, but it's narrow enough to fit into a wheelchair accessible van. I also was on the hunt for the perfect portable ramp that I could use for my many trips to Hungary. I found it. It's made by the Dunlop Company. Everybody needs one. And they will give you a big discount if you tell them I sent you. Okay. And then I became a Certified Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator, which, think about the International Accessibility Professional Certification, but specifically for the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I am a trainer for one of the ADA centers in the United States. And in my city, I am the chair of a really wonderful group called the Council for Community Accessibility. So we advocate for the accessibility of everything in Bloomington, Indiana. Come visit. Yeah, there's the ramp. You can see a picture of me in my portable wheelchair, portable power chair, with the ramp in a cargo net on the back. It weighs 2 pounds. It's fantastic. Okay, so in 2024, I left my job in international education and joined Access Able, which some of you may have heard of. It's a 25-year-old UK accessibility company, and I started up their US office. And what we do is create detailed access guides to venues of all types, so universities, hospitals, shops, restaurants, airports, so that users, regardless of their disability type, it doesn't have to be a mobility disability, they can access those venues with dignity and confidence because they know what they are going to encounter. So as everyone here knows, disability is as diverse as the population, and what might work for one wheelchair user or one person with low vision or a person with a fluctuating condition will not always work for another person. So give disabled people the information they need to make their own decisions because they are the experts. Everyone in this room knows that, and that's why I'm happy to work with Access Able, because that's what we do. So everyone here on the panel today is trying to address problems related to the fact that one size does not fit all. For far too long, affordable and attainable mobility devices for developing countries have been one-size-fits-all versions that have not taken sufficiently into account the broad spectrum of human needs and the conditions on the ground. Our panelists have greatly advanced the goal of providing the most appropriate equipment for the needs of the users and the local environment, and they are going to tell us more about how they are doing this at scale. So with that, I am very happy to introduce my colleague, Martin.
Hello, thank you very much. Thanks for that introduction. I'm pretty happy to be here today. I think it's an honor and a really big responsibility speaking to you. You are world leaders and game changers. So I think everything I'm gonna say is gonna be positively impacting what you're doing in your areas. So as I said, my name is Martin. I'm a white guy. I'm with a white t-shirt. I have black hair, black beard, and some white hairs in my beard. I'm getting old. I'm 36 years old. And since I was a young kid, how do I, with his? Since I was a kid, I was a pretty hyperactive kid. I was medicated with Ritalin. Really, I was a real well-played kid, but I loved motorcycles, bicycles, horses, riding around, playing Nintendo, playing football, being outdoors. I loved dancing, and I had a car accident when I was 19 years old. When we are 19 years old, the whole life is ahead. We are like in our best years, and suddenly a wheelchair came into my life. Barriers pop up suddenly. It was barriers I didn't expect to overcome in my daily life, but that made me think about what possibilities are there to be executed, but we really can't do it because accessibility needs, mobility, desires, and inabilities. So I started industrial design, and that took me to creating a prototype in 2017, which made my life easier. I could go point A to point B, point C, point D, point C, and I called it math. It gave me mobility, accessibility, time, and when I had all these three, I could work. So now I can be also independent economically. I can be an income generation people. I can be part of the economic system again. So I come up with reduced mobility, I hook onto a map just in 3 seconds, and I have augmented mobility. The problem is not a handicap or a spinal cord injury or an amputee. The real problem is exclusion. Exclusion, where I come from, just in my city, there are more than 70,000 wheelchair people. Some of them don't even have a wheelchair. Some of them don't go out of their homes. They are in quarantine lifelong. All of us were in 2020 with the COVID in quarantine. But that was really when math overcome its own barriers. We were making last mile deliveries with handicapped people to people who were in COVID locked up, when real life is the other way around. Wheelchair people are locked up and the other people are serving these people. In Colombia, violence has led more than 400,000 people handicapped, not only in wheelchairs, many of the injuries. 80% of these people have no income at all. The ones that have some income, 80% of those don't have any type of contract. So we want to solve the problem. We want to solve the problem through these innovations. Handbag hook systems that can attach to your wheelchair in just 3 seconds and are available to click on to 80% of the rigid wheelchairs on the market. Besides this, we amplify our market with 2 tricycles, electric tricycles, for amputees, elderly people, and other handicap issues. Some real stories and testimonies are Nani, which is the director of MAD Foundation today. She has empowered herself, she's living alone, she's paying her own expenses, and she has a purpose in life. Ever has delivered more than 20,000 deliveries, creating an income for more than $6,000 in a year. Without a MAD, this possibility didn't exist. And finally, Fer, she's director of MAD Experience. We have a route downtown Medellin where people can have not only a tourism experience, but an awareness moment where they are going to be interacting without any boring tests or stories. They're going to be enjoying the city, but they're going to understand how important is a ramp, even to get a beer. They're going to understand how important is a bathroom when you can't access to it. So that's why we are pretty aligned with some of the SDGs from the UN for 2030. These are some of them, but we are more into the last one, which is sustainable cities and communities. That's because we want to make more than a device. Our traction today is 260 MADs that are on the move in different countries, mainly in Colombia, and we have been able to go 45 times around the world. These kilometers or mileage will be impossible if these users were not using a MAD device. So our biggest challenges have been a low-income generation wheelchair community. If they don't have an income, they can access for well-being. They can access transport. They can access health system. So we created our products mainly because of bootstrapping and friends and family in our beginnings. Our next steps is not getting in love with our solution. We are getting in love with the problem. We can't afford to get a MAD to 65 million people in the world. We would love it. But we are creating a software that tries to make life easier in cities for people. We are mapping cities, we are making accessible and continuous route, and highlighting the barriers so that cities can intervene their cities with the less expense possible. So that's MAD, and I will not only spill, it drives change and opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Martin. We are now going to be joined by our colleague Coleman, who is appearing,
Good afternoon.
who recorded a video for us.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's quite a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today and to be able to share with you the journey of a local wheelchair manufacturer. For a quick description, my name is Coleman Detembea from Kiara Assistive Tech in Tanzania. I am a dark-skinned male with a low haircut and wearing a round collar black t-shirt. I co-founded Kiara Assistive Tech 6 years ago with the aim of filling in the massive gap that exists in accessing appropriate assistive devices in Tanzania, Africa, and globally. We all know the numbers. Now, to be able to share our story properly, allow me to share a story of a friend, Aiden. I met Aiden in 2021, 9 months after a very unfortunate incident had led to an amputation of both his legs. And at this time, he had already quit school, and although it was just 200 meters away, it was an uphill, rocky road, and there was no way for him to get there. He got a wheelchair from us in December 2021 and enrolled back into school in January 2022. It didn't take him long to adapt. By the time I visited him in December 2022 for a follow-up, I had to keep up with him when we were moving around the school. He was leading an active and independent life. He's expecting to finish primary school this year, and in 2024 he was spotted for a talent in wheelchair tennis, and since then he has been training with a member from the national wheelchair tennis team. An appropriate wheelchair transformed Aiden's life and opened up limitless possibilities for him. But many of his schoolmates are not met with the same fate. Many of them are using inappropriate wheelchairs that are ill-fitted, broken, and do not offer them the full independence that they need to be mobile. Because of that, a scene like this, a pile of broken wheelchairs that are abandoned and not repaired, although it's very unpleasant, but it's not uncommon, especially in public school settings. And one of the reasons is the reason we see here in this study that we refer to. 70% of donated wheelchairs end up being abandoned within 6 months. Either they are inappropriate for the environment, or they can't be repaired locally, or they're not appropriate for the user that they're being given, and they're not provided through appropriate processes. This is the reason we started Care Assistive Tech, with the aim of making appropriate assistive devices accessible and contributing to a community where everyone has access to a life of dignity, autonomy, and community. We do this through local production, collaborative design, and responsible distribution. And we follow this thorough process that from referral, assessment, prescription, funding and ordering, product preparation, fitting, user training, follow-up, and together we combine this to create good health and mobility for our beneficiaries. This is a process that ensures the device that is provided to someone is appropriate for them. And many have come before us starting wheelchair workshops that have in one way or another failed, and many have started charity initiatives that did not fully solve the problem. So for us, it's very important that we create a model that is sustainable through a hybrid business and non-profit charity model. We work with a diverse range of customers, and we have a catalog of over 30 products to date. And this is just a quick glimpse of our catalog. And we have distributed over 2,300 devices to date, with over 900 of them being wheelchairs. And this is our quick history. Part of it I've already told you. But as we move forward, what we are looking forward to is to start building our own factory, get it ISO certified, and build a sustainable business case for assistive devices manufacturing, so that by 2030 we contribute to a ripe and financially independent AT industry in Tanzania and Africa that is attractive for investors, for innovators, and different stakeholders to come and develop it and ensure that a wide range of assistive devices are available affordably. These are my 2 cents when it comes to strengthening local innovation and production. How do we scale from where we are now? I believe that it is necessary, number one, to have advanced manufacturing facilities with open doors to local innovators to design, produce high-quality, competitive products. We also need to develop nationwide and continent-wide strong referral pathways that ensure market access for all small and medium innovators and manufacturers, but also create collaborative efforts with international and local partners so that those who wish to help, instead of coming to disrupt the local industry, but rather through charity and donations, choose to collaborate with the local partners, but also employ market shaping and policy advocacy efforts. We believe that through this platform here at Zero Project, we can partner with many of you, if not all of you, to make this dream become a reality where everyone has access to a life of dignity, autonomy, and community. Thank you so much for listening. You can learn more from our website or our social media pages, and we look forward to collaborating with you.
We were really heartbroken that Coleman couldn't join us in person thanks to the visa system. So please follow his company and reach out to Coleman. Now I'm happy to introduce Justin to my right.
Hi everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. By way of description, nobody else is going to say it, so I might as well say it myself. A handsome-looking guy of Indian origin, in his 40s, wearing a black jumper with a stubble. So I'm going to talk about this topic from two lenses. One, from a perspective of an innovation manager at the Global Disability Innovation Hub, where we work on system pathways, and second, as co-founder of Thrive Mobility, an assistive technology company that works in wheelchair innovations. And while there are challenges in terms of product innovation, there are also challenges in terms of business innovation. Both have to go hand in hand. Can you move to the next slide? Thank you. Most wheelchairs that scale globally are not the ones that anyone in this room would want to use. About 90% of the wheelchairs that are provisioned are hospital-grade wheelchairs that are not meant for community use or day-to-day use. This I've seen practically as a wheelchair user myself for the last 15 years in Asian countries, but even in high-income countries, the provisioning is uneven, and the narrative needs to change if you're looking at scaling. And wheelchairs often scale as products. You know, we're talking about units sold, tenders won, and the numbers reported, but it has to scale as mobility. It can't just scale as products. And when I say mobility, scale as mobility, it means that it has to, look at how the manufacturing process is, how the provisioning systems are, how training happens, both from a provisioning standpoint, also from the assistive technology user standpoint. Are the training adequate? And overall, are there any rejections in terms of the device, and how well the uptake is? The next one. And at GDI Hub, we try to close that path and ensure that innovation scales beyond product innovation. We don't just stop from a GDI Hub standpoint whether this innovation is great, whether it's good. We ask a harder question, something that, how can we make this innovation survive the system? Whatever is happening in terms of provisioning, in terms of regulation, in terms of quality standards, how can this innovation start, withstanding that system that we have around? So we work with ventures to start with pathways, not just prototypes. We map what happens after the demo, look at the manufacturing constraints, procurement rules across different systems, service expectations, policy misalignments. Second, we treat lived experience as a governance. It's absolutely a mandatory stuff that needs to be there. It can't be just, you consult with users and take their inputs, but they have to be part of the design process and after that as well. Not just for feedback, not just for pilots, but actual decision making as well. Because scale decisions made without users almost always optimize the wrong things. And third, the design should be for multiple provisioning logics, not just B2C or just overall B2B. If you're talking about provisioning, it has to be across the national system that's there, probably in high income or some of the countries where you have something like NHS or the government agencies do that, like in the US, how the insurance provisions for it, but also in other countries where both these systems do not happen or they're not there, you have to innovate for those systems as well. When you approach innovation in that angle, when you're completely looking for the entire pathway, what really happens is a lot of uncertainty is removed upfront itself. You're not, staring at any surprise at a later point. Because often what happens is, at a lab or in your own R&D, you develop, you innovate, and then when you actually bring it for provisioning, after all the testing and all of that, and if things start failing at that point, it's a costlier process when you have to go back all the way and start from square one. Manufacturers need to know what they're signing up for, procurers need to know what they're actually buying, and innovations don't collapse at handovers. Most pilots fail not because they're bad, but because the system meets them for the first time at scale. So the pathway thinking removes all of those initial shocks. Can move to the next one. Yeah, so this slide has all the uncomfortable stuff, right? What actually happens on the ground? We're talking about, and Kiyoki is laughing because he's gone through all of this. So on ground, we're talking about, to start with, tooling. Then we're talking about certifications and service costs that come along with, even before demand happens. Even before the wheelchair volumes you're talking about, all of these things happen. And then the moment you start reaching out to suppliers because your prototype is ready, they talk about MOQs. How many are you going to buy so that I can give you at what point, what rate? And those MOQs that the suppliers talk about are in thousands. And the initial first few months or years, you're not going to hit that 1,000 volume. So I think that needs to be revisited. And any innovation that you're talking about, you have to talk about training, spares, repairs, unavoidable certain stuffs in reality. And it's a combination of all of this that creates a promising wheelchair innovation. Now, from the standpoint of the perspective of a co-founder myself, how did we overcome some of these challenges at Thrive Mobility? We started sharing upfront cost. In fact, we reached out to our competitors and started making partnerships with them so that there are shared components that we can work towards. We also started expecting the deliveries that we had, we started out phasing out. So initially we started with B2B and defense contracts, and only then we started opening it to B2C. And we were strongly guided by the principle of, if there is no prescription, provision will not happen. You'd be surprised, in India, there is no prescription system for wheelchairs. Next page. And then very intently, we started with small batch manufacturing, even if there was demand. And we de-risked by adding the certification and R&D cost with the grants itself when we were working with the university, and that really helped. And we delayed volume simply because we wanted to enable longevity. With any of the demands and the volume that we got, we said, hold on, we're going to take some time. Because what that led is, scale was engineered into the operating model and not chased through volume. You can move to the next one. You can play the video for me, please. What you're looking at is India's first lightweight wheelchair. I know wheelchair innovations have been there for decades. This is for the first time you're seeing a lightweight wheelchair at about 8 kilos, rightly how a wheelchair should be, portable and high efficiency and high performance. And that's what helped us garner defense contracts in the first 6-7 months itself. And we are now staring at volume of 200, 300 that are coming from all these institutional orders. Yeah, what needs to change to scale is you have to optimize for outcomes and not for units. You have to root for mobility right from day one and long-term usage. This directly leads, from a user standpoint, devices that they can actually use every day. And from an institution standpoint, rejections are less, and there's a long-term availability. And from a manufacturer standpoint, these are clear specifications. That's about it. On time? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. Thanks for watching the clock. I was supposed to be doing that. I didn't. And finally, last but not least, Kiyoki King.
Thank you. I'm Kiyoki. I'm wearing a kind of gray plaid shirt. I've got kind of longer, dirty blonde hair. You won't be surprised that I'm from California. I think I'm the oldest one at the table, so that's not what I expected, but apparently the case. Let's see, I have a video on my first slide, whenever that's ready. Okay, so this is Kareem. He's user number 1 for our Cub pediatric chair. It tilts so that he has a nice eye line in class. Because it's tilted, it holds his head back. And so there's about 9 million kids in the world that need a postural support chair like this. We designed it for low and middle income countries, for small cars, for rough roads, and it grows with the child. So as the child grows, the chair gets bigger. So at this point, there's about 5,500 of these chairs available. Next slide, please. Here we go. Okay, so there's 5,500 users in 40 different countries. This is Ukraine, Canada, Uganda, let's see, also in Canada, Kenya. And then here on the left, this is the competitor in the USA. So the government pays around $6,000 for this chair, but through co-design with users and some kind of frugal engineering, we were able to get a cost that's really quite affordable. So this is the Cub chair. So we offer Cub for around $800 to commercially, and then we give a giant discount to NGOs. But what I want to talk about more is about how to get even lower costs and even better distribution. So this is my co-founders. There's 3 of us. Dave is a wheelchair user. Yoda is our mechanical engineer. We have a team of 11. Over half of us are people with disabilities living in low and middle income countries. So we bring the lived experience of disability and then also the markets to the business. In our combined careers, we've got 600,000 wheelchair users, 9 patents. We've set up manufacturing in 5 different countries. We've trained over 1,000 wheelchair providers, and we've got an extensive experience in both nonprofit, for-profit, and government systems. So I'm not saying that to show off, but I have some kind of off-the-wall opinions, and I just want to say that they're not coming from thin air. So the first is an idea of an appropriate company. So we talk a lot about appropriate assistive technology. It fits the user's needs and environment. I like appropriate company because then the mission of the company is aligned with what the user needs. So we're a benefit corporation. When we develop new technology, new patents, as CEO, I'm obligated to use that for our mission. So naturally, a for-profit company is going to go towards profit. So one of the reasons that we see so many people not having what they need in terms of assistive technology is because the for-profit companies continue to go for profit, which is generally in the north. So reducing cost is just so important. Like, it's just maximally important. Again, the status quo in the US is around $6,000. You can see a big portion of that is profits. Large-scale production and local assembly is a great combination. We're able to get low unit cost, very high quality, and then when you combine that with local assembly, you've got jobs for people with disabilities, refurbishing, lower transportation costs. When we sell direct to clinics, we're able to take a couple of layers out of the supply chain, and this helps tremendously on reducing costs. Sometimes those layers are doing really important jobs, but not always. We can use technology to innovate a couple of different pieces of the supply chain, particularly on product support, availability of spare parts, and provision support, helping clinicians to do better with complex cases. And then we like to think about a wide catalog. So there's people who twist an ankle, and that's a person with disability for a little while. And then there's a grandmother, and she first needs a cane, and then she needs a walker. And then there's people with long-term disabilities. Normally, we think about those as like 3 different markets. But if you look at them together, it provides a lot of strengths so that you can get some nice economies of scale. So here's the larger chart. And then you can see on the right side how this splits out over the value chain. So as the product kind of walks from the manufacturer across to the user. So each of those layers has got its own profit segment. Profit's important. We're a for-profit company. That's a good thing, but we don't want to we want to optimize it. And if we go to the next slide, you can see in some markets where these kind of middle layers are not adding so much value, maybe we can skip over those. And then this pie can get down from, like 6,000 to 1,000. And it's not about, it's about reducing the cost so that more people can be served with limited resources. So we're thinking a lot about the Eastern EU and what could potentially happen there. So this is sort of a vision that we have. We would hope for hundreds of clinics. So private OT and physical therapy clinics are able to buy directly from us, the manufacturer. They're able to get training maybe on weekends or something, so there's kind of alternatives to the normal way that professional training happens. And then we would want to also have canes, walkers, crutches, and things available in pharmacies. But then there's a QR code on each product so that when a grandmother needs to know, am I ready to move on from my cane to a walker, she's able to get some support there right on her phone in her own language anytime she wants. So another thing that we can do is promote the products through OPDs. So help them to be involved in the business and to get benefits from the business. And this is be an alternative to doing what's normal, which is like national level exclusives. That tends to make higher prices in our experience. We really like to use tech. So we have a little chatbot called MeerkatBot. And with this, the user can go onto WhatsApp and they can find out about this part of my wheelchair is broken and I want to get this repair and how do I order that spare part. They can get like person-specific or diagnosis-specific advice. We want to continue to develop that. So a thing that I would say is that this isn't a fantasy. This is a business that actually happens basically everywhere. So when I lived in Albania last year, I can see that the market's kind of going its normal, kind of miserable path. So there's a lot of scarcity. So even very low quality products are going to bring a big price. It's like expensive kind of junk AT. So what we would like to do is to bring with our kind of normal style employment for people with disabilities, high quality products, good product support, and provision. This year, we'll continue to build our business with NGOs. That should grow almost $1 million. And we'd like to open a lean subsidiary in Ljubljana and begin direct sales in the region. It's a great opportunity for us to be here, and I'm really glad to speak with you. I look forward to questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I prepared some questions for our panelists, and our colleague Coleman is going to answer two of them by video. But I'm going to read out the questions, he'll answer two, and then I'll have you guys jump in to answer whichever of these questions you'd like. So the first one, which some of you have addressed already, is what lessons can you share with us about maintaining quality while keeping the cost of devices low?
Thank you so much.
Maybe especially, some memorable fails you've had in that area would be instructional for others. The second question is, have you witnessed infrastructure improvements being made in the locations your mobility devices are being used, thanks to the greater visibility of people with mobility disabilities? The third question is, have you experienced that the ratification of the UN CRPD has had any effect on funding access to appropriate devices or inclusion in any of the places that you work? And then finally, what is the most important thing that funders, whether they're charities, international development organizations, venture capitalists, et cetera, what's the most important thing you think they need to know about the sustained provision of appropriate mobility devices? And we will hear now what Coleman had to say about the first question and the last one.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for your follow-up questions. I would love to address two of those. Number one is how the lessons that I personally have learned on how do we keep the costs low while maintaining a high quality of assistive products that are manufactured locally specifically. Number one is, as I insisted earlier, the importance of having high quality manufacturing facilities. What happens now is people start individually, whether as university projects or personal passion projects, but then they have to be able to manufacture within the technological and material means that they have and have access to, which is very limiting. And to a certain extent, in the early years it works, but as they grow and they want to scale across the country or across neighboring countries, it's important that although they have better functionality, they are also able to compete quality-wise with some of the imported products that might be inferior but have a greater finishing. So it's good that they have this, but also, given the nature of the market, it's going to take some time before they get to supply through governments, and it's going to take some advocacy works too, where most of the scale is, which means they will not have the advantage of the economies of scale, and they do not have the investment to set up their own manufacturing facility. But if they are able to have a facility that is shared and is dedicated to AT, where people can go design, manufacture their products at really small cost, because then the facility is sustainable through 365 days working with multiple projects. So this one person who is probably making 100 products a year is still able to manufacture using those facilities, but very cost friendly. I think this is something that can help a lot in keeping the cost low while maintaining the quality high. But otherwise, as long as we're working from the scale of like local workshops, most of the costs are going to be very high, and the labor is also very intensive and costly. And the second question I would love to address is on what is the most important thing that funders, charities, international development organizations, venture capitalists need to know about the sustained provision of appropriate mobility devices. I did mention earlier that many of the initiatives that go to low and middle income countries to support end up disrupting the market. But I am not against international charities supporting wheelchair provision or provision of any other assistive devices. I am against these projects working in silos, because if a market is being developed at a national level, it's very important that all stakeholders work together. If I make a prosthetic leg today or a wheelchair and sell it at $200, and another stakeholder comes and distributes it for free for 6 months or a year, after they leave, after that project phases out, people believe that a wheelchair should be provided for free. But if, including those who can afford, but if there can be more consolidated systems, then it is easier to determine a case-by-case scenario where how best do we support those who cannot afford and allow those who can afford contribute a certain amount based on a certain scale that is decided on. That's number one, but that's one way to collaborate. So you bring your donations, but then allow the locals to guide the process in a way that treats the people not equally but equitably, which is very important. The other way is that although providing donations gives out bigger numbers much faster, so you can easily distribute 100,000 wheelchairs in a year, but we do not have the local capacity in most countries yet, low and middle income countries, to manufacture 100,000 wheelchairs a year perhaps. But with the right investment, they can be able to do that At the same time, they'll be able to provide employment to local people, including people with disabilities. They'll be able to build their own capacity to design new products. They'll be able to build their own capacity to keep repairing and following up on the existing users. This all will be developing at the same time. So as much as these international organizations, charities and partners, if they invest, especially with local manufacturers and actors, it might slow down the impact in terms of numbers that they're able to achieve within a certain time frame. But in the long game, it benefits everyone: the local economy, the local people, the families of the users, and everyone involved. So I believe, number one, on the first question, we need advanced facilities that can be shared by multiple innovators. And number two, we need initiatives that collaborate with the locals and not move against the locals, even unconsciously. Thank you so much.
Okay, who wants to go?
Yeah, I can talk about the quality question. I think the biggest lesson that we've learned, and it's out there, is low cost is not achieved by cutting quality. Quality is absolutely non-negotiable. It is what it is. How do you achieve low cost is by optimizing manufacturing, provisioning systems, procurement, and all of that. But what often funders, or across the board, what people often fail to understand is it's always better to give, let's say, a $700 wheelchair that lasts for 5 years than giving a $200, $300 wheelchair that lasts only for 6 months or 10 months or 1 year. And what about the parts and the components that go along with it? You have to keep an eye on it. And the durability and the long-term device of a slightly costlier device is always better than something that's cheaper but doesn't last long.
I would jump into high cost and low quality and high quality and low cost. I think one way you might fail is in your cash flow, because sometimes you want a lower cost, like purchasing, importing, fabricating for much quantity and lower prices, but inventory are gonna rise and your cash flow can be affected. If that happened to me once, and it's a little bit difficult to overcome when you have no cash flow and like your sales are not expected as you thought they were gonna be. So I think you can need to be a little bit gentle, trying to lower in costs. Another way, I agree with quality shouldn't and can be lowered. So what we tried to do once was making real high quality products, but leasing them out to people that were not really linked to the bank system, because they had no income generation, no work, nor stability, or nothing to put against the bank, so they won't share money to them. So what we did is we lended the money, but we lended the mats so that they could work on them and pay the leasing, and it became really good. But after a time, there were some that continued paying, but like 80% of them or 70% of them just ghosted us, kind of, because we understand the real necessity of people. People will prefer food in their dish than paying a leasing. And if they don't have a permanent job, they're going to be struggling to generate that income daily, to have money to pay a leasing and also to put food in the plate. So sometimes I understand. So yeah, I think we need to keep quality high, but getting the quality low, it's kind of difficult nowadays. Prices are skyrocketing everywhere, in every business. Imports are expensive, petrol expensive, everything. So yeah, I think it's the biggest thing to overcome, but disability is pretty linked to poverty and no income. So we need to, many people say me like, you should export, you should export. Yeah, I should, but I will compete with other good brands in Europe and other places, and nobody's gonna be looking after the people who really need mobility in our country, in our regions. So I think, yeah, we need to make something about it. We need to change the world, even if it's one world at a time.
And that's why we're here, I guess. All right.
You guys right?
Yeah. So I think we are just about out of time. 10 seconds. Do we have time for one question from the audience? Does anybody have a question for any of our panelists?
I have something to quote, like, there was a question of, like, what you're doing have changed the cities around? And we have an awareness tour where people go into the tour, and after they take the tour, we have been like responsible for making more than 30 ramps in the city, in private restaurants, here's a guy who made a ramp in our city also, Ulrich. Like, he was a constant visitor to a restaurant, and the restaurant made the ramp for him. And that way, we're getting each area in our city better, with accessible ramps, accessible bathrooms, and yeah. That's it.
Well done, Ulrich.
Yeah, well done, Ulrich.
Thank you all so much for joining us.
Justin, those are nice comments, very
Thank
very
you.
solid.
From experience.
Yes.